Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
Are you a new or sophisticated investor wanting to learn how to operate a successful syndication business? For life-changing training from the nation's leading syndication expert, my friend Vinny Chopra has the training you need. Text LEARN, L-E-A-R-N, to 474747. This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Puja Talati. Thanks for being on the show, Puja.
Thank you for having me.
No, I'm honored to have you here. I've heard about your all's group numerous times, and you all are doing some great things in the industry and some big projects. So, but she is a partner at Enzo. Is that how you say it, Enzo?
Mm-hmm. Enzo
Yes,
Multifamily.
Enzo Multifamily, which currently has 2,450 plus units valued at over $350 million in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, Jacksonville, and Orlando markets. Puja leads the marketing strategy and operations for Enzo and has an MBA from Duke University. Prior to joining Enzo, she was a management consultant at Deloitte. How do you say that? Deloitte, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and a brand manager at the Hershey Company. So, wow, Puja, I really look forward to this interview because I know so many are trying to market their business, market their properties the best that they can, make as professional as possible, and I love hearing different ways people are doing this, different strategies, and somebody that's operating at the scale you all are. I'm going to really enjoy hearing how you all are doing this and how you've done this. So, get us started maybe a little bit with what you're doing exactly for Enzo, and around the marketing side as far as just your role there, and then let's dive into some techniques you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. So I basically lead all of the marketing strategy for Enzo. So from a company perspective, it's everything from like the websites, communications with investors, our newsletters, social media, that whole gamut. And then, since my background is also in strategy and operations, I also lead a lot of the internal operations for the company. And, people forget there's the real estate investment side, but then you also still have to keep the company running. So it's, trying to build up scalability for the company. Really that's the focus. And then from a property level, I also focus on a lot of the marketing strategy for each of the properties that we acquire.
Okay. So, I liked also how you all have a hand in the marketing for the properties, and I feel like a lot of times, a lot of operators will just kind of leave that all to the property management company, or maybe, are you all doing management as well, in-house management?
No, so right now we have third-party property management companies, but, my expertise and my background has been, in brand management. And so that's something that is like a skill set that I've been able to take from the consumer product world and bring it over to real estate. And so I really enjoy it. And I want to be able to make sure that, even our third property management companies, they're following some of the structure that, it's the foundation in marketing, and I'm able to give that to them. So I do like to play a big role in that, and then, let them kind of take it from there. But I think what I've seen is it's been well received because then the property management companies can learn, and, together we can make a strategy that works really good for the property.
Nice. No, I like that. You all take that role and take some responsibility there and help them as well. So, I haven't heard of too many that are doing that, and so that's awesome. But let's talk about the marketing for the business, and in a minute we'll talk about the marketing for the property as well.
Sure.
But you mentioned that, like, websites, communication with investors, and newsletters. But let's break that down a little bit. So maybe as far as your website, give us some key things that are important in our business. Obviously the syndication business. What do we need to have on that website? What are some maybe mistakes that you see people making? In how they built a website?
Sure. So if I can actually take a step back even before the website. So one of the things that we did at Enzo, and this is something that's very common with, some of the bigger, Fortune 500 companies is, and actually a lot of people thought that this was a fun exercise for the whole team. So whether you're one person, at the company, or you have, 4 or 5 team members, you need to actually think and look back and say, okay, so what what am I as a company? What is my personal brand? What do we stand for? And I think if you don't really know that, then it's really hard to actually do all of the marketing elements and figure out, okay, well, what does my website, what should it look like? So you first have to figure out, what is your goal? What is your vision for the company, and what do you stand for? So for us, for example, at Enzo Multifamily, I'll use Enzo as the example, is we wanted to separate ourselves from all the other financial institutions, where a lot of times people think of, financial institutions as a little bit, very, very proper, suit and tie, kind of stuffy. And we wanted to be approachable and kind of lighthearted and fun, but at the same time, we're still making money for people, right? So that was something that was really important to us. So we try to focus our branding more on that. And then the other thing you want to do is like your positioning statement and your target consumer. So you have to think about, okay, who are your consumers? Are they the younger generation? Are we talking millennials? Are we talking someone that's older? So you want to make sure that when you're developing all of your marketing materials, you're speaking to that customer or that consumer. The other thing with the target consumer is you want to make sure that you're not targeting everybody. That sounds like a great idea. Well, I don't want to miss out on targeting everybody. But what will happen is you'll start to send mixed messages to folks, and people will respond to things very differently, and you'll start to see that your efforts aren't really working. So it's always good to have like a target bullseye audience, and then you can always have a secondary audience where you know that it'll start to spread to those folks. But it's very important to have something that's very precise, and you know exactly who you're targeting and what your messaging will be. And I promise you, it will go a long way, and then it'll just kind of have that ripple effect. So that's kind of just laying the groundwork of things. And that's really how we started to develop the website. And we figured out, okay, we know who our audience is. We know what we stand for. Colors and all of that stuff is very important. If you go to our website, you'll notice that it's very approachable. It's very clean, very modern. And that was just something that how we wanted to represent ourselves as Enzo.
Nice.
And then on the website, some of the things that you absolutely have to have, and I think people know this, but I'm just going to reiterate it because maybe you haven't thought about it. It's always good to have an about you section and a story, right? People want to know the story about the company. I get this question all the time. How did you form? Tell us, like, how did you start? How did you grow? Have that on there. People can really relate to that. Think of some of your favorite brands outside of real estate. And really people buy those products because they have some sort of connection. And a connection is key when you're talking about investors in the real estate business. It's always good to have, your property list on there. If you're just starting out, that'll be sparse, but just remember it will continue to grow, but that is your credibility. People want to see what you're doing. It'll show, what markets you're focused in, giving information or FAQs, having industry related news. All of that stuff will build a footprint. People can search for you, have contact information. Things. I would suggest looking at other people's websites and seeing what they have on there. And then you can put together your own website.
So, do you recommend hiring somebody to build our website, for you, or do you recommend, when you're starting out to possibly do one yourself, or what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, if you know how to use WordPress or build a website, I would say go for it. I have experience in marketing, but usually we always outsource that stuff. So what we did was kind of a collaboration. I designed the look and feel of it, and then we have a webmaster that's fantastic in execution. And so then he kind of helped bring all of that to life. So I would say, when you're starting off too, there's a lot of things you have to do. If there are areas that aren't really your expertise, I highly recommend outsourcing it. It'll save you time, and let the expert kind of do that.
I agree. But by the time I learn how to use WordPress I can kind of get around a little bit, but, correct something, but very little. And by the time I learn how to use it, I probably could have already closed on another property. So.
Exactly. Like that's the main focus, right? Is the real estate part of it. And all of these are things to make it happen. And so having a webmaster and also just thinking about the structure for it, they're going to help you and tell you what's going to work from a scalability perspective. What can you add on? And you really don't want to duct tape that.
Yes. So, all right. So, now we'll move to the, communication with investors, as far as the marketing is concerned, help us to think through that a little bit. I know a lot of people have questions about, well, how much communication or how do we communicate? And I'd love to hear, how you all do that, how you all found to be the best way to communicate and as far as the marketing side.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we found is, at first we used to send a lot of emails. And I think, nowadays there's so much email that you're getting. I get hundreds of emails a day. So you want to make sure that you're not getting lost in that. So what we found to be a really good cadence is with our investors or prospective investors, we do a monthly newsletter that just tells people about, what's going on in the market, what Enzo's been up to, what areas do we really like. We talk about the financial industry, et cetera. So just give them some nuggets of information. I mean, you can probably read that newsletter in under 2 minutes. And what we like about that is, people have their phones out when they're waiting in line for something or they have a quick minute or two. So having something short and sweet, you're most likely going to get someone to open that newsletter and to actually read it. And that's really important because you want to make sure you're spending time creating these newsletters. You want people to actually read them. You don't want them to just delete it. So that way you're top of mind. If they expect it on a monthly basis, so you have a little bit of that cadence set forth with them. And, we've received a lot of feedback that seems to work really well. I would just be careful of bombarding people with newsletters or emails and things like that, because at some point, they'll just start deleting them.
So what does the layout of your newsletter look like? Are you including many photos? Are you, a lot of stuff links, or, what are you giving to the investors or potential investors, through that newsletter? Other than obviously the market information, some things you included.
Yeah, so we actually don't do pictures for our newsletters. It was something that, we decided not to do that. It's probably very short paragraphs. Something that I learned in my consulting days is, whenever you email a partner, make sure that your whole email can fit on their screen. And so I've kind of kept that in, the back of my head whenever I'm writing something. Less scrolling is a little bit better. Just keep it short and sweet. And then, if people want more information, we'll provide some links here and there that they can go read about it a little bit more. But I think, in the place where people don't have a ton of time, but they want to get enough information, that's really what we're trying to give them. And that's been really, really receptive. And, even between the partners and I, we've had some of our partners say, no, we want to give so much detail and we want to really tell them about that. And I always say, well, if they really want to, they have enough information that now they can go Google it themselves because they're intrigued. But we're also trying to think of our broader, target market. A lot of people don't have too much time. They have so much stuff to read. So that was how we kind of came up with our layout.
Nice. And what kind of CRM or email marketing system are you all using?
Yeah, so we use a couple of different tools. We use Mailchimp. We found that it's been really easy to track. And this is something that, if you're starting off, I highly recommend. You can tell when people are opening your newsletters or, whatever marketing material you decide to send out. So what you can notice is you can figure out, okay, what time of day is the best time of day for me to send things? If people aren't opening your newsletters, well, maybe something about it is not intriguing enough. So these are all analytics that are also part of, customer relationship management. It's part of marketing. And it's not just, I always tell people marketing isn't just about the beautiful stuff that's being executed. It's the analytics behind it, because if it's not working, then you're not doing a right job reaching your audience. And then the other thing we use is Infusionsoft. So that's part of our automation. When people sign up on our website, all of that information gets into Infusionsoft, and then we also have these, automated emails. And so as you become bigger and you start to scale, you're going to want some of these types of processes in place.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to send 200 emails just one at a time, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is a great way. Mailchimp is free at some point. And then, as you grow bigger, you're going to have to pay for it. But if you're starting off, it is a great tool to use.
So, on that topic, you're also using Infusionsoft. Why would you keep using Mailchimp now when you have something like Infusionsoft?
So for us, we use it kind of for two different things. We're using Mailchimp because you can also tag with all of the investors, and you can do that with Infusionsoft. So we just actually implemented it in Infusionsoft, so we're kind of going to blend a little bit of the both. We're using a lot of our Infusionsoft on our back end with our website. So that's really helped us manage the day-to-day emails that are coming through. It automatically will schedule all of our conference or all of our calls with our prospective investors. So we're kind of using that as more of like an operational management side of things. And then Mailchimp right now has continued to be our communication method for investors. So, and yes, some of our communications do come from Infusionsoft. So it just depends on what we're using it for.
Now, any other ways that you're marketing your business that you could elaborate on to help us, help us market as well?
Yeah, so I think social media also is really important. I think a lot of people know that. Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. What I would say is, you absolutely have to have a presence. The website really is the credibility, right? People are, when they find out about you, they're going to Google you. And they're going to see, where are you? And just, you kind of have to have that in order for people to say, okay, I want to invest money with these people, but they don't even have a website. I don't really know about that. If you decide to do a platform like Facebook or Instagram, there's obviously, you can advertise if you want to on there. But one thing I would just remind yourselves is when you do that, you need to be consistent. You can't just have a page and then not do anything with it. If you feel like you're strapped for time, pick one platform, but do that platform really well. Facebook and Instagram, they're kind of meeting different audiences, but they also have different ways of communicating with the audience. So if you decide, Facebook is where I want to go, I don't really have time to do Instagram, that's totally fine. Just pick something and be really good at it. And again, if that's something that you don't have a lot of time to do, there are ways where you can outsource some of that and then oversee it. That's what a lot of people do. And, if you look at the bigger companies, that's what they do. They will tell the agencies, this is our brand, this is who we stand for, and they'll come up with a social media content calendar. And what that does is you can look at the whole month and say, okay, this makes sense, or no, this doesn't really fit my brand, or I don't really want to talk about this. And you work with them to figure out what works. And then you have something set up for 30 days. Because if you're doing this on a daily basis, you're going to realize, like you said, you don't have time to then close your deal. So you have to be really smart and very strategic about, giving up things to let other people do it, and then making sure that you're overseeing that.
Love it. You got to outsource. if you're going to scale, I mean, you can't spend, 6-8 hours a day on Facebook and expect to get far in the real estate business. You may be known, but you're not going to close on your next deal. So,
right. Yeah. And, if you're just starting off, and I realize you may not be able to do that, make your own content calendar, and then you can always outsource later on. And then, we always still sprinkle stuff in with, things that are happening live. You don't want to miss out on those, but you got to think, one of the things that I'd like to say is you have to think long-term and not just in the short term. So as you're planning, just make sure that you're setting these goals and saying, okay, in 1 year, here's where my company is going to be. And in 3 years, here's where I want it to grow. And just make sure that you're setting yourselves up so that you can just add on to it versus having to break that foundation and then start all over again.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the content calendar. Even if you don't have the budget to hire somebody, you can make your own content calendar, and you can even batch a lot of, quotes or some video, numerous videos or whatever. And so that way you're prepared for the whole month, pick a couple days that you can just work on content, and then you don't have to spend the whole month working on it. Right. And we've done that in the past. So, okay. So, obviously social media is extremely important, with branding and marketing but I like how you started with, who are we? What's our goals? What's our, what do we stand for, and who your audience is? If you don't know who your audience is, the marketing's who you going to market to, right?
Exactly.
But let's move into the property a little bit. Marketing for the property. Tell me about how you all help the property management team to do that.
Yeah. So I think, some people forget that when you acquire the property, you want to make sure, and this is a key thing, write it in your PSA if you can, make sure that you get the website, make sure you get any social media that they have, logos, all of this type of, intellectual property. Write that in your PSA that they're going to hand over and transition all of that to you. It does a couple things, right? One, if they have a really great website that has a lot of searchable SEO, right? Meaning that a lot of people have searched. And so now it's actually probably on top when you do your Google search. You don't want to lose all of that awesome data. You don't want to lose all these reviews, especially if they're good reviews. And then if they have a social media platform where a lot of tenants or residents are already on there, you want to be able to seamlessly transition that as opposed to having to start a new page and then getting all those residents that currently live there, onto another page. So these are just some things that are very, very important. Sometimes you kind of lose sight of that when you're working on closing a deal, but that stuff really matters. So, when we get into the company, we want to make sure, as we're going through the due diligence process in the background, we're working with our prospective, third property management company on the design of the website. If we need to do a logo refresh, what are we going to do? Have all of your marketing collateral ready, because, on day one, when you close, all of that stuff needs to be rolled out, and you need to make sure that there's a good transition plan. So, a couple things to think of depending on your strategy. If you're value add, are you looking to maybe change the resident population? Well, then that's where you also need to think about, okay, well, how do I reposition this property? How do I remarket to a different type of resident population, right? So those are things that you're going to want to think about. Maybe, on some of our properties, we had a really, really day ago. So if you're going to be looking for a different type of residence, well, that's probably not going to work. So what we did is we didn't want to spend a ton of money either. So we just gave a different, pop of color, and it really just made, that property look fresh again with some different colors. So you don't have to spend a lot of money doing that, but you just have to think carefully of what's your brand strategy, what's your overall business plan and approach, and make that happen.
Okay. So in that case, it cut out just a little bit, but instead of maybe doing a complete rebranding, you just did some new colors and really to give it a fresh look.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we had like gray and maroon, and we just changed it to a nice blue teal color, which, made sense. It was in Florida, you're thinking sunny, warm, and it worked. And then that way we didn't have to spend a lot of money changing all of the signs on the property, because that can get really expensive.
Nice. And so any other ways that you are, or that you help anyway, the property management team in marketing the property? Are you taking a hand also in the social media and some of that stuff, or in the website directly, or are you leaving that mostly to them and just playing kind of an overseeing role?
So with the website, I do actually take a lead on that. So I work with the web development team, make sure all of the content is right. But then I also work very closely with third property management, and I have them review it to say, hey, does this fit, the strategy where we're going? You guys are there every day. What are your thoughts? And then together we collaborate to come up with something that works really well for everybody. They'll help us and say, well, these are the key things that we think the residents are looking for. Another thing that we look for, or I'll be very involved in, kind of on a weekly basis, we sort of track this, is how is our foot traffic? So that's really important when you're talking about occupancy. And so when we're analyzing that and we're saying, okay, our foot traffic isn't really there, what are some of the avenues that we can do to increase that? And so we'll look at that and we'll pull some levers and we'll say, hey, we're on apartments.com, but we're not really getting that traffic. Let's call them. And, these companies will help you figure out or understand, maybe you have the wrong phrases in there. People aren't looking for that. Maybe your pictures are a little dated. So all of that stuff really matters when you have your property, and you want to make sure that your pictures are refreshed. It's some of the first things that people will look at. And it really makes a difference. When you do this when you're selling a home, you stage your property. It's very similar. When people are looking at a place to live, they want to make this place feel like, it's their home. So we'll look at that. We'll look and say, okay, here are our goals. How can we backtrack? If we need to get, 10 people through the door every day, well, how many people do we need to target? Maybe we need to target 1,000 people. And out of those 1,000 people, maybe we get 100 people to call. And out of those 100 people, we want 10 people to walk through that door. So those are some of the analytics that you want to put in place. And then if things aren't working on a weekly basis, you start to look and see, and then you'll change some of the variables. And it'll vary on every property. No property is alike, but then you'll start to see some consistencies and things that work and things that don't work.
How are you tracking that foot traffic?
So with apartments.com, they'll give you all of these analytics. If you do Google Ads, Google AdWords, they will give you all of these analytics. Our third property management company knows, like how people are coming through the door. They ask them. But also the cool thing about some of these places, when you sign up for apartments.com, they'll give you a phone number that's a unique phone number. So when people call the property, it's being tagged. And that's how you can tell, okay, this is where so-and-so is calling from, which is really cool data. And then it helps you show like, okay, you know what? Google is working really great for us. And, our drive-by traffic is okay. So maybe we need to change the sign here to up it up a little bit. But where you want to make sure that your dollars are working really hard for you. And that's very important.
Very important. Yeah. Thank you for elaborating on that. And you got to track it, right? If you're not tracking it, there's no way to know where to put those dollars.
Absolutely.
So, Puja, what in the marketing, we'll say marketing specifically, what's a way that you all have recently improved in a big way that we could all apply to ours? Maybe something we haven't discussed.
So I would say some of the big things is actually being able to, what I've actually done is I've taken the analytics from all of our properties. And like I said, not every property is the same. So what I started doing is seeing, which avenues are working really well for some of our properties. And I've been able to apply that to some of the other properties where it's working okay, but what are they doing differently? So on one of our properties, we went really hard on trying to increase our foot traffic. And so now I've seen literally in a week, we have probably doubled the foot traffic. And so then I told our property management company, let's do the same thing on our other two properties. They're doing really well in foot traffic, but that doesn't mean that they could do even better. So, while you start to grow this portfolio, don't look at these properties as silos. Use that information so that you can just become better and better.
Great. Wow. And so what is your best advice for caring for investors?
For caring for investors? I would say, the biggest thing I always tell people is I treat my investors like it's my own money, right? And I think that goes a long way with everybody. People always ask us, what's your skin in the game? And yes, we invest as well. But for us, I bring it back to marketing. It's your brand and your reputation. If you're not doing a good job, well, then you're kind of out of the business. And so I think it's very important to have integrity as a company, be really honest, and take care of your brand and your reputation. I mean, with social media nowadays, it is so easy for that to just go downhill. So just be transparent as possible, communicate with your investors. That we always tell all of our investors, if you have any questions and I don't know the answer, I will make sure that I'll get someone on the phone to give you that answer. And I think you have to treat your investors, as if it was your money. And I think that, we found that that's been really successful for us.
What's one thing that's contributed to your success?
So I would say for me, it's been the constant thirst for learning. I have a background in consulting. And so, we're always thrown from one project to another project in totally different industries. And so you kind of had to have that high learning curve, and that sort of stuck with me. And so even when I was at the Hershey company, I would always take on roles where I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't love it at first, but then for me, it was, okay, well, how can I become better at this particular role? And so trying to be in the places where, I feel the most vulnerable, the most uncomfortable has helped me learn a lot. I changed industries. And so I kind of had to do that all over again from, working with chocolate and candy to working in real estate. But that's been something that's been really helpful. And so what I would tell people is I think a lot of people are also career switchers, or they're doing this, in addition to their full-time job. Never stop learning and always have that curiosity, because that will get you really far.
Love it. You got to be willing to be uncomfortable, don't you?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. It's not fun and pleasant, but I promise you, you'll be happier in the long run.
And before we have to go, how do you like to give back?
So for Enzo, we usually pick a couple of charities that we work for every year, and it's something that we donate to. But, I think for me personally, the long-term goal actually for my husband and I, as we're doing real estate, is to, become financially independent. But one of those things that we want to do is then start a nonprofit. My husband is a surgeon, and so he's actually done a couple of trips abroad to Belize and to the Dominican. And so we'd like to start a nonprofit organization where, he can continue to do these types of surgeries abroad. And, from a business aspect, I can kind of help on that side. And, we have two little girls. We have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. And, we really want to show them they're very lucky and they're very privileged. And this is a way that we can do that and give back to the world.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And, before we have to go, tell the listeners though, how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Yeah. So, if you're interested in Enzo Multifamily, you can find us at www.enzomultifamily.com. That's ENZO multifamily.com. And then you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook.
I will say I went to your website. It's very impressive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.